Hello, my name is Lester Kiewit.
And I'm Tara Roos.
And welcome to The Bill. It's our 5th episode where we talk politics, parliament, and a little bit of pop culture with an added hot take. How are you doing, Tara? It's been a busy week in Parliament, plenty of committees, a fiscal framework that has finally been passed, and that's what we'll talk about. But primarily, we're going to be talking today about someone who wants a job and then also someone who is out of a job. Let's start with Helen Zille for Joburg mayor, throwing a hat into the ring. It's a significant play for the Metro of Joburg in the 2026 local government elections.
Absolutely. My working theory, and this is quite far ahead to predict this, I think Helen Zille will become the mayor of Joburg, and then I think out of a great active protest, Herman Mashaba will move out of the city of Joburg, and he'll probably move to like KZN. I'm sure he has a house there, and he'll just say he can't do it anymore. He can't subject himself to this autocratic rule under the DA.
Okay, but let's ask why Helen Zille wants this job and what would make her a candidate that Joburg voters would want to vote for.
The DA has no one else, and that is quite frankly the simple answer. You know what? Many people have controversial opinions about Helen Zille. My personal opinion is that I don't agree with her politics at all, but her impact on South African politics, and specifically for women in the political landscape, is undeniable. However, she is 74 years old, and I think the fact that she is now seen as the best contender for this position, it makes no sense. And the only reason they're doing this is because they have no one else. I mean, when you look at the DA's Gauteng leadership as a whole, it is quite weak. Specifically when looking at the provincial legislature, when you look at the poor performance by Salim Simanga, I mean, they're so close to the premiership and he hasn't been able to move the needle. They said the exact same percentage points from the last election to 2024. It's laughable. And when you look at the stronghold that they have in Gauteng, I think the kind of hope is, yes, that Helen Zille could go in and turn the city of Joburg around, but also who else? Because there isn't another viable candidate who they could put on the ticket that will cause enough of a stir for the city of Joburg voters to say, actually, I think we need to edge our bets here.
And that's a problem for the DA, but also a problem for other parties. It's how local government has been largely ignored in terms of the political talent of political parties. Largely, they start out in provincial level as some sort of political breeding ground, getting training and then going into national. But it is how local government has largely been ignored when it comes to political party talent. And there are outliers in the city of Cape Town, Jordan Neil Lewis, there's Chris Pappas, also in KZN, but largely out of our major political parties, there is no real political talent, young political talent to, as you say, move a needle into the progress that we need in our 8 metros and also more than 200 local municipalities.
I also think the instability of local government largely adds to why a lot of, specifically I think younger politicians or politicians at large, do not want to go into the waters of local government because it's not for the faint of hearted. I mean, Jordan Neil Lewis is extremely lucky that he has a near 60% majority here in the city of Cape Town, but that is not the reality in local municipalities elsewhere. And I personally know many people who work at a national level who love local government, who think that local government is where we should be putting our time, effort, and energy, but they do not want to risk job insecurity in order to do that. A big concern that I have over Helen Zille's job, and look, I don't think that having a DA mayor is going to be the worst thing for the city of Joburg. I really liked Mpopolate when she was the mayor. I thought she did an amazing job. But again, I bring back this question. Helen Zille is 74 years old, and this doesn't come from an ageist point of view. But
she'll be 75 at the 2026 local government elections. 5 years in the office, she'll be 80 when a possible term as Joburg mayor ends.
And that's the big thing. If we're looking for a long-term plan to turn around the city of Joburg, you need someone who is invested in the city, who is going to be there for the long term, and to see a long-term committed vision roll out. Because unfortunately, the issues that the city of Joburg is facing, it is not going to be fixed in 5 years. And whether or not Helen Zille could even do anything remotely to start charging away at all the chaos that is in the city of Joburg within a 5-year term, I don't think is likely.
So let's talk about why some think Helen Zille would be a suitable candidate. The Democratic Alliance in 2006 got a plurality of votes, not an overwhelming majority in the 2006 local government elections. It meant that local government coalition politics was on the cards. And what Helen Zille did in 2006, she got, was it 12 political parties that excluded the ANC and the then Independent Democrats to form a coalition. And what Helen Zille was good at the time was slowly, while having a broad coalition, but slowly bringing these people into the Democratic Alliance. So you had people who were strong MACO members in 2006, all of a sudden starting to get DA membership. And that is how Helen Zille coalesced 12 political parties into a political bloc that then in the 2011 local government elections contested as a Democratic Alliance. But Helen Zille only was actually mayor of the city of Cape Town for 3 years.
Yeah.
From 2006 to 2009. She then went on to become Western Cape Premier. What did Helen Zille do during that time? Trying to put my finger on it. Because over that period, since South Africa got granted the 2010 Football World Cup, massive public investment in infrastructure to prepare for that World Cup, largely coming from grants from the national government. So for that 3 years that Helen Zille was mayor of the city of Cape Town, if there wasn't a World Cup for South Africa to prepare to, what can we say Helen Zille actually did in those 3 years that qualifies, as some people would say, would make a good mayor of the city of Joburg?
I think for a lot of people, what they're looking at now is a saving grace. And the idea and why I think the Democratic Alliance is pushing for Helen Zille forward is because regardless for them, it's a win-win situation. If she's able to send the city of Joburg around, it's the DA came in to save the day. And if she isn't able to move the needle at all, they then will turn to the line of even Helen Zille couldn't save the city of Joburg. Because what they're relying on is her national appeal and her national image. This idea that she is almost the monarch of the Democratic Alliance. And Helen Zille and Jacob Zuma, I would argue, are probably the two most influential political figures in South African politics. And the idea that even she couldn't save the city of Joburg, it's that there's this idea that there's something so beyond Japan, the city of Joburg. Why I think Helen Zille will win. This is, and again, it's so early to make this prediction, I think Herman Mashaba will also go forward as the mayoral candidate for the city of Joburg. I mean, that's the only thing he references in any speech he's ever given, ever, is when I was the mayor of Joburg. And I think they're going to go off in a head-to-head race. I think, and this is quite a bold prediction, I think the ANC will support, because they will have to go into a coalition in the city of Joburg, and I think the ANC will support Helen Zille's mayorship. And that's how I think the coalition is going to be formed, because I don't think that the EFF or MK will get enough votes.
Okay, so broadly, and what we're seeing, the slow but steady realignment of political tectonic plates, that the ANC as we know it and the Democratic Alliance as we know it may be forming some sort of operational alliance now, but maybe becoming a DANC in the next 5-10 years. But let me go back to why people think Helen Zille was a great mayor of the city of Cape Town. Yes, 2008 she was voted world's best mayor. But major infrastructure investment for the 2010 World Cup. Yes, bringing in a wide array of voices and essentially starting the reality of coalition politics in South Africa. Yes, political stability, not necessarily the Democratic Alliance, but political stability in the city of Cape Town since 2006 sees Cape Town being run better.
Yeah.
But also, we cannot deny that the city of Cape Town benefits from being an old city. It benefits from having a institutional knowledge of entrenched city bureaucracy. So whether it be the Democratic Alliance, or whether it be the ANC, whether it be any other political party, fundamentally, Cape Town runs well, not because of which political entity is in charge, but simply the city has been built with a deeply entrenched city bureaucracy. We have older suburbs here that essentially run themselves. We have business nodes all the way down Main Road, from the city centre to the South Peninsula of central improvement districts. Where the city does need to improve on is the growing communities, the new communities. And that's what Jordan Lewis told me in his first interview after being voted in as Cape Town mayor. He says, he admits that the city of Cape Town, previous administrations, had not planned for a growing city. So generally, I contest the fact that the city of Cape Town is well run because of the DA and well run because of the 3 years of Helen Zille as mayor.
I don't think it's inherently about her term as mayor and the mayorship as a whole. I think South Africans have a very limited political memory when it comes to the achievements of individuals in positions of power. I mean, Dan Plato held 2 non-consecutive terms as the mayor of the city of Cape Town. If you had to walk down on the street now and ask who was the mayor after Patricia de Lille and who was the mayor before Jordan Lewis, they wouldn't be able to tell you who Dan Plato is, because people forget. They forget broadly the day-to-day, what is happening in the city, and large-scale achievements down the line. What they know is what they feel on a personal level. And people feel the impact of Helen Zille on the South African landscape and of politics. When you say her name, people know who you're referring to. And that is what the DA is looking to sell votes and hoping that they can almost replicate the model of their operation in Cape Town and transfer that onto Joburg. I think the distinction is that unlike the city of Cape Town, Joburg does not have almost those self-sufficient suburbs that the city has, and they would need to use a very different governance model, specifically operating in a coalition government, but also looking at the scale of the city of Joburg and the many issues that they face, unlike here in the city. I think that she will encounter a lot of challenges. I mean, I'm not a fortune teller, unfortunately, although I like to think that I am, but I do think she will become the mayor. I think that is my ending off. I think it is going to be so entertaining. Look, there's a chance someone Mashaba doesn't run. But I mean, this is like my personal plea to Action SA. Please, I would love to watch it play out.
But there's also impact on internal Democratic Alliance politics, that if Helen Zille does run for the DA mayorship, there is a DA internal election.
Federal chair.
Federal chair. So which means if she runs for mayor, she can't run for federal chair. She can't run for any other leadership position, which means that this then frees up a little bit of space for John Steenhuisen
to transfer over,
to continue as his term as DA leader. I do understand that there is some form of friendly arrangement between Jordan Lewis, Cape Town mayor, and John Steenhuisen. That if John decides to run, Jordan won't contest. And there is a school of thought that in terms of public visibility and public liability, Jordan Hill Lewis could actually fare better in terms of DA election processes and national elections if he was in fact the face of the Democratic Alliance and not John Steenhuisen. So Helen Zille's possible nomination for DA mayor does also play into DA politics.
Absolutely. I think there is, obviously they will never come out and say this, but there is absolutely a friendly arrangement, and the idea that if John decides to run, Jordan won't run. I do think, and hot take, but I think that if John and Jordan had to run against each other, I think Jordan would still win. I think internally, I think in terms of popularity, the people in the city of Cape Town, they love JHL. they love Jordan Neal-Lewis. He is like their favorite mayor ever. And I think Jordan Neal-Lewis, he has a lot of favorability amongst people because he just has, and you know, John Steenhuisen is a very good technocrat. I think he's a really good transitional leader for the DA. And I think that they really needed John Steenhuisen's term to kind of figure out where they stand in the political landscape. But John Steenhuisen just does not have what it takes to carry the DA forward. And I don't think that he has that kind of long-term vision for the DA. If he does choose to stand again for re-election, I think he's just kicking the can down the road because he is not a long-term leader. Whether or not he will transition into Helen Zille's federal chair role, I don't know if that is going to sit well in terms of the DA caucus, because then it's this idea that it is not truly, their elective conference internally is not truly fair and democratic. It's just a continuation of the same rotation of seats. Who becomes the federal chair of the DA if Helen Zille has to become mayor? I think that is a very interesting question.
I think Ivan Meyer has been quite prominent. Is a Western Cape entity, is Minister of Agriculture in the provincial government. He has deputized as federal chair, does have the finger on the pulse on what happens inside the party on an organizational point of view. Do you think he's elevated?
Yes and no. Look, I think Ivan Meyer, he is almost not to compare to coloured men to each other, but he is almost an Eddie Andrews of an administration, where in the sense of like you know, Eddie Andrews.
He's a rugby player, former rugby player. No, that's not the comparison you're making. The comparison
is like, you know, like Eddie Andrews is the deputy mayor of the city of Cape Town. And like people love Eddie, but it's just like if you think Eddie Andrews is going to become the mayor of the city of Cape Town, it's like, it's not really reality. Yeah. I think Dion George is a strong pick, current Minister of DFFE. He was the DA's shadow minister on finance. I think that's a big kind of overarching concern that they have. It could go to John Steenhuisen. I think the likelihood of that happening, I don't think that it's quite there. But I mean, Ashra, current Deputy Minister of Finance, also another strong pick. But I would stick to those kind of options.
My theory on how the Western Cape, I think the feeling from many people is that politics is centered around Gauteng, particularly Joburg, Bruma, DA's headquarters, and Lutulia's ANC's headquarters. But I think there's something about Cape politics in how it breeds characters, and that how the rest of the country is sort of cottoning on, we need characters, political characters in the Western Cape actually transition well into national politics. Patricia de Lille, Helen Zille, Jordan Neal-Lewis, all from Cape Town. Various ANC figures all translate well. I think that's always been the case since 1994. Hernes Kriel versus Alan Busak, Chris Nissen, who's now the commissioner at the Human Rights Commission. All this Western Cape politics actually transcends and plays a feature nationally. And I think what the rest of the country doesn't have is characters. And this could probably be the start of Western Cape characters, Cape Town characters, in the form of Helen Zille, you know, bringing that Cape Town electoral philosophy to Gauteng.
Look, I mean, Helen Zille was born in the city of Joburg, so technically speaking, we can't, I mean, she was the mayor and the premier here, but she is a, what do they call them in Gauteng?
Gautenger.
Gauteng, yeah. She's one of them at heart. So she could turn the city around.
We can't say Valis anymore.
Oh, I didn't know that was a term before my time. But I think Helen Zille is going to make a really strong case for the mayor. What I think is going to be extremely interesting is, I mean, the city of Joburg is about to be a hot pot of contestation come up in local government. I mean, if we thought the national election ballot was long, the amount of people who are about to contest for mayor of that city, like, they're going to be spoiled for choice.
But here's the thing. So, would be a PR exercise. Well, November 2025 is a PR exercise. It's G20. We saw what happened to Delhi last year in India when they hosted. Entire city revamped, streets blocked off, clean daily, just to get that shine going for world leaders gathering there. Cyril Ramaphosa is concerned about the way Joburg looks, feels, and runs at the moment. And I wonder, does National say, put forward a case, Joburg, sorry, we've tried, but we're not getting anywhere. Administration for you, and they can say between now until local government elections in 2026, when there is an election of representatives by people, say we're putting the city of Joburg under administration.
Administration won't save the city of Joburg. There's no time to turn around the city of Joburg before G20. I think that is a lost cause. Like whether you're driving in Diepsloot or Sandton, the potholes will find you. And there are just so many deep-seated issues in the city of Joburg, from the caucus to when we're looking at service delivery, to when looking at the everyday lives of the residents of the city of Joburg. You don't have water, you don't have electricity. Sandton is the richest square mile in Africa, and they get water shedding. It's actually ridiculous when you look at how bad things have become. The reality, they could put Joburg under administration, but I don't think that the government has the capacity to deal with the problems in the city of Joburg. And that's why I do think that the ANC will ultimately put their backing behind Helen Zille and her mayorship.
The ANC has no one to put forward.
Who's the ANC going to pick, guys? And so that is why I think, when I read the political cards, the tea leaves in front of me, that's what's going to happen.
Let's wait and see. 2026
or February of 2027.
Can't wait. So that's someone who's looking for a job. Let's talk about someone who is out of the job. Look, it's taken near 12 months. But after months of controversy, Minister John Steenhuisen, Agri-Minister John Steenhuisen, finally firing his Chief of Staff, one Roman Cabanac, and sorry to say, fired him on his birthday.
Yep. I'm going to give an unpopular opinion. I don't think that there was any reason for John Steenhuisen to fire Roman Cabanac. The caveat to that being, I don't personally agree with Roman Cabanac's politics. I don't think I could ever have a conversation where him and I align on any views. But at a principle standpoint, I would love to know why now John Steenhuisen fired Roman Cabanac. Because if it was because, what the department had come out and saying was that he didn't pass the security checks, there was administration issues, and that's why he has been subsequently let go from his role. But we all know that's not the reason. And I think when you look at why there was large public discourse about Roman Cabanac's hiring in the first place, at first was that he was this podcast bro who didn't deserve the job. But then it came out that he actually has a law degree, and then a lot of people, and me personally, take issue with certain views that he holds. But John Steenhuisen knew all that about Roman Cabanac before he hired him. They were friends before he was placed as Chief of Staff in the department, and John Steenhuisen knew him on a personal level. He did not have an issue with Romanac's public views and Roman Cabanac's politics until the public took issue with Roman Cabanac's politics. And what I would add to that is that for a political party that doesn't seem to care about what the general population or the mainstream media says, the average GA voter couldn't tell you who Roman Cabanac is. They don't care about Roman Cabanac's politics, and they don't care that Roman Cabanac got fired. So I beg the question, why did John Steenhuisen fire Roman Cabanac? If not to appease the mainstream media or the public outcry that came, because the public outcry that came was not from the DA voter. And so, I'm just quite confused, because personally, it says nothing about John Steenhuisen's personal politics, because he hired Roman Cabanac in the first place, and firing him now subsequently almost makes him look like he's flip-flopping.
Yeah, so how much politics, internal GNU politics, because the uproar around the hiring of Roman Cabanac came in and around the time when the GNU was formed, ministers were sworn in, and there was consternation around Bella, which was eventually signed. And to some, it felt like, well, if we're going to move on one thing, then we need you to move on another. And with generally the being displeased, many within the ANC, around Roman Cabanac's hiring, that some have said, well, maybe this was a push from internally, maybe even as high as possible, to say, John, bad hire. If you want us to make any move on anything with Bella and other policy issues, get rid of this guy.
Absolutely. I do not think that this was a decision made out of John Steenhuisen's own volition, because, again, like, John knew who this man was. And I mean, there's a lot of issues that I take with Roman Cabanac's personal opinions. I mean, a lot of his subsequent tweets have now been deleted, but when he questioned, saying we don't really know what happened with the Sharpeville massacre, like, I mean, his comment about how he likes Freddie Mercury, but except for the fact that he's gay, like, they're just the most outlandish thing that like an individual has said, who then subsequently becomes the chief of staff to a minister. I mean, yes, he has a law degree, but what subsequent agricultural like advice is, at an administrative level as well. I mean, has a law degree, but managing people, it just didn't align.
Yeah, but you know a lot of ministerial staffers. Just how much freedom is a staffer allowed to have? In the past, you've had spokespeople or com staff of ANC ministers. Look, Fikile Mbalula, when Eseto Hassani was his spokesman, it was quite loud and proud on many issues on social media. He's allowed to have his view. Also, part of John's team is Sihle Ngobise. I don't necessarily agree with his quite strident free market observations and opinions, but that's his to have, and I respect his right to have those opinions. But at what point do we say that the thoughts and the views of a staffer represents that of the principal?
Ultimately, that is at the discretion of a minister. When these staffers are hired specifically at a director level, because that is where Roman Cabanac was at in his salary tax bracket, they go through extensive vetting processes. I know a lot of staffers who work in the executive, they have to take competency tests. They go through a lot of extensive, rigorous processes, even if they are political appointees, as Roman Cabanac was in his case. They go through all these processes because they do need to be qualified for their jobs, because they're dealing with national matters and national issues, and it comes up to the discretion of the political principal. And if John Steenhuisen, as Roman Cabanac's political principal, when hiring him, had no issue with his politics, the fact now that it almost seems as a media decision or something to appease the public, I mean, it makes no sense. And if anything, I think the DA is going to lose votes over this, because Roman Cabanac was very much part of the almost far right is a bit of an exaggeration. Fringe right. I mean, he started that Purple Cow pro-capitalist political party that also died, and he's a part of that subsect of like podcast bros, and I don't use that term in like a derogatory manner, but it's just who he is, who vote for the DA and who advocate for the DA. Like the same issue with Ronaldo Gross, but he deserved to be fired. So, but it's like that same kind of universe who I think are now going to vote the DA off because of this idea that they're trying to appeal to the mainstream media now that they've entered the GNU. And I don't think that this has helped John Steenhuisen's case for long-term re-election.
Connected, and it's probably a conversation that you and I should have another time, but particularly when it comes to black politicos in South Africa who may have views that are different from, let's say, the ANC majority. It's this question that I've had, and this conversation that I've had with people of how many classically liberal black South Africans, those who align with the Democratic Alliance, Free Market Foundation, Institute for Grace Relationship, that we live in a constitutional democracy. Everyone should have the right to believe in the opinions, as long as it doesn't infringe on the rights of others. And this conversation that when a black South African says, well, I'm a classical liberal free marketeer, and that they're somewhat seen different. What's your thoughts on that?
I think that there are a lot of classical liberal black South Africans, a lot of neoliberal black South Africans, but they're just not vocal about their opinions in the kind of larger public discourse.
Out of fear?
Yes, out of fear, but also I just think people are scared to say that they're liberal in 2025. There's a lot of this idea that you don't want to be caught out and get into like an extensive conversation about your own personal politics. I do think, not that the mainstream media, I fight strongly against this notion that the mainstream media always leans left. I don't think that that is the case all of the time. I think that a lot of the push on social media does come from younger generations who naturally lean more left. Winston Churchill infamously said, if you're young and not liberal, you don't have a heart, and if you're old and not conservative, you don't have a brain. But it's this idea that social media, and I mean, Twitter is not politics, you know? A lot of what you see on Twitter is that the EFF is really gaining a lot of traction and the DA is falling at the wayside. And then when you track that to real life polling, it's actually that the DA increases when a lot of times people say that they're going to decrease. I think that when it comes to political ideology and the influence of race, I think that oftentimes the neoliberal and classical liberal politics that is held by Black South Africans are those who come from a particular socioeconomic class who don't feel comfortable exercising their political views, knowing the current socioeconomic state of Black South Africans at large and the socioeconomic realities of the majority. And so I wouldn't say it's out of fear, but more so time and place. I think they'll happily have those conversations. And I mean, I've had conversations with a lot of them like over dinner, like in a private conversation, but they're not going to get on Twitter and tweet unless they have something to gain. Like Vusi Temokwa is like a good example, like classical liberal, but he has something to gain from spreading his political views.
Very quickly, something that was finally passed in Parliament last week, the fiscal framework of 2025. 3 tries in Ogodongwana finally gets it right, and the Democratic Alliance pushes this over the line, throwing their support for the ANC minister in Ogodongwana.
Third time's the lucky charm. Shame, it was actually so cute when they were, I say cute and he's literally the Minister of Finance, but when they were voting on the fiscal framework, Enoch Godongwana walked in and he had his hat in his hand and he was like walking down to go find his seat. And you know what, he just looked so relieved because like that look on his face, he'd be like, you know what, actually, we're getting this thing over the line. Like, thank goodness I don't have to get up there and table another speech. That man has seen things.
But it's not over yet. There are departmental budgets.
Yes.
And there will be debates on what departments spend, what are priorities, what is fat that can be trimmed off. We're not out of this budget cycle just yet.
We're not. The next vote happens on the 26th of June when they're going to vote on DORA, the Division of Revenue. So now the money bills and all the budget bills and votes go to committees now to be discussed and then they will be voted on. But appropriations bill they vote on in July. So then everything will be fully wrapped up and everyone will get their salaries, all civil servants will be paid. And then we're back at this in October for medium term. So the budget saga for the year isn't over.
Finally, hot takes. What's your hot take of the week? What's irritating you? What's happening in your world?
My hot take of the week is that going to Japan in 2025 is like going to Thailand in 2015. Like, everyone is doing it. You don't know why. You don't know what all the commotion is about. Like, I kid you not, 7 different people who, like, don't all closely know each other. They're all going to Japan. I have, like, 2 friends who've really been to Japan. Like, going to Japan is the new indicator of a midlife crisis.
My hot take, it's winter. People have colds and flus. Ban finger buffets until August. They are germ orgies. They're people double dipping their chicken strips in the hummus and you're making everyone sick.
But there are germs all the time on all seasons.
To ban finger buffets for winter.
But not every meal is a sit-down meal.
It is a public health issue.
Not every meal is a sit-down meal. Should we not just teach adults to wash their hands properly? Oh, like, that's like the main issue. There are germs all seasons of the year.
Why not let's ban young people kissing each other for the course of the entirety
just get
of
the flu
season.
vaccine.
And get the flu vaccine and don't double dip the chicken strip. Stay away from the buffet. Don't cough over.
Bring back masks when you're sick.
And bring back masks.
Bring back masks when you're sick.
Tara Roos, a pleasure as always. That's episode 5 for The Bill. If you have a question on Parliament and process or politics, write it in the comments and we'll have a special show answering all of your questions, including Tara going to give you the best package on an all-inclusive to Japan. So until next week, from Lester and Tara, have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.